I knew my husband was hiding a huge secret, so I played dumb. But then for some reason, he proudly confessed to it himself. My husband and I had our first baby 9 months ago, and for our baby's homecoming celebration, my husband's aunt gifted our child a huge and chunky knitted blanket. This blanket is so soft, and I've made multiple comments to my husband about how I would like to find a full-size blanket just like this one, and even joked that I'm kind of jealous of my baby. Well, a few weeks ago my husband snuck off to the store, but he refused to tell me where he was going and why. I was a little suspicious, but pushed it to the back of my mind. But then that evening, he out of nowhere said that he would like to have an hour of alone time every night after our son goes to sleep. He said it's because he doesn't get enough me time, and stressed to me that during this hour he would like not to be disturbed. I dubiously agreed, and although every night I wanted to run in and see exactly what he was doing, I trusted him and respected his privacy. But a few nights later, during his alone time, our son started crying. I went over to check the baby monitor, and turns out my son had simply lost his pacifier and was going back to sleep. However, our baby monitor also shows part of our son's room, not just his crib. And it's there, in the corner of our baby's room, that I saw my husband sitting on the floor. I leaned in to look a little closer, and that's when I noticed the bunch of chunky yarn in front of him. I turned the volume on the baby monitor up, and I heard a YouTube video on how to finger knit playing. That's when I realized that the reason he went to the shop and the reason he wanted alone time is to buy yarn and make me a blanket just like I had wanted. My heart absolutely melted seeing him knit for me. He's a giant man, 6'4" with basketballer hands, and the knitting needles looked so tiny in his hands, but he was being so delicate with them, I wanted to cry. I went back to the living room with a grin on my face like I was a high school girl who's just been caught up to date with the latest gossip, and I just sat back so happy. However, the only problem was that my husband is awful at keeping secrets. He cannot do it to save his life, and I knew he would tell me all about the blanket soon. I myself said nothing, and all it took was a few more days until he mentioned that his alone time was spent working on a surprise for me. My ears perked up and I acted all excited about it, pretending to ponder what this surprise could be. I could tell he was struggling so hard not to tell me, so I let it go for the time being. However, before I knew it, he was coming to me multiple times per day, solely to tell me that keeping the surprise was really hard, and that he wanted to just tell me. I kept urging him not to tell me because it would be ruined, but then one day after dinner, he decided he just couldn't keep it in anymore. He took me to the drawer he kept the blanket in and pulled it out. "I've been learning to knit to make a blanket for you," he said shyly. I of course knew this, but it was still the cutest thing I had ever seen in my life. So much so I almost started crying, and I kept telling him how much I loved it. The blanket was only about a quarter done, but it was genuinely a lovely blanket. The yarn was really soft and was my favorite color. I could tell he had taken his time because of the consistency of all the loops. Even unfinished, it was perfect. He told me that he kept moving it around to different hiding spots, but since our house is very small, it was only a matter of time before I accidentally found it. He also said he had run out of yarn and asked if I wanted to pick out another color to add to it. I excitedly said yes, and we made a little date out of it. That day, we grabbed lunch and walked around the craft store before I picked out a complementary color to the one he chose.